Hi, everybody. Melanie here, and I want to talk for a little bit here about cognitive processes, thinking about going from lower level to higher level thinking. And we're thinking about this aspect from a developmental perspective of cognitive development and how it applies in educational settings. So this is going to be broken into 3 parts. So here we go with part 1. We're going to center the work of Benjamin Bloom. Benjamin Bloom in the 1950s developed what is called a taxonomy for cognitive processes. And a taxonomy means ways to classify something. So he thought of ways to express different kinds of thinking. That's what a cognitive process is. But he had 2 kind of aspects to this. One were the cognitive processes themselves. The other were knowledge dimensions. And so we're going to cover both of those. And although Benjamin Bloom was focused on cognitive development when he was doing this work, we are also going to be thinking about this in terms of planning for instruction in educational settings. And it basically is helping his classifications help us understand our thinking or cognitive processes from basic to higher order thinking. Bloom's taxonomy was revised by one of his students, Lauren Anderson, and her colleagues in the 1990s. So we are going to talk a minute about that change, and then we'll move from there. Before I get into that change, let me talk here about the 6 categories and their sub specifications, basically. So here are the 6 categories, moving from lower cognitive processes to higher cognitive processes. We begin with being able to remember and then understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. So these cognitive processes, if you're thinking about it, are on a continuum of going from basic to more complex thinking. And then the subcategories that Anderson and her colleagues kind of helped fill out help us understand a little bit more of each of these 6 main categories. So for remembering, we think about recognizing, identifying, recalling, retrieving. Understanding, we're thinking about interpreting, clarifying, paraphrasing, representing, and so on. And you can see all those different aspects. And then under applying, we have being able to execute something, carry it out, or implement something, use it. Analyzing, we can think about here, we can differentiate things by discriminating, distinguishing, focusing in on a certain part, and selecting parts. Organizing, finding coherence or sequencing, being able to integrate things, outlining, that's thinking of that sequence, being able to parse it out or think about the overall structure. And then also being able to attribute or deconstruct, right? Like what causes something else. Evaluate, this is where we're checking, we're coordinating, detecting, we're monitoring something, we're testing it. We might be critiquing or judging something. And finally, we're able to create something. So we're able to generate, we have a hypothesis and we can generate a new hypothesis based on all of the stuff we did beforehand. We can plan something new. We can design something new. We can produce or construct something new. You can understand in order to create something, you have to remember basic information. You have to understand it. You need to be able to apply it in different contexts. You need to be able to analyze stuff. You need to be able to evaluate. So these do support one another, which is why they've been represented in a pyramid form, with the lower being at the bottom and the upper being at the top. So what I want to talk here is on the left of this figure, you see Bloom's original 1956 categorizations: knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. When Anderson and her colleagues, and Anderson was one of Bloom's students, remember, when they went to think about this, they made some changes. So you can see the changes here went, instead of knowledge, it's remember. Instead of comprehension, we had understand. Application, apply, analysis, analyze. And then you'll see the top two were switched in order. So why the change? Here we go. The categories are now moving from being nouns to verbs, because thinking is an active process. It's something we do. So these categories should reflect the doing of thinking or cognitive processes. It also, by making it a verb, it reflects that a process through which thinking occurs is, as I said, an action that we're going to do. Also, this made it much easier to apply in schools or for unit plan and lesson planning, which, you know, even though Bloom's kind of started out with this idea of development, it got taken up very quickly in the world of education as a great tool. Because if you understand children go through these developmental stages, that we can apply that as well. Now, that's not to say that younger children can't create something, right? It just means they're doing it on a more basic level, right? And then it's also useful for a larger audience now to be able to use. And it has been taken up in areas other than education. Companies use this for the kind of work they do, that their individuals do, and things like that. Okay, so here it is in its new form, okay? And there's some little explanations for each one. So at the remembering, we ask, can the student recall or remember the information? Understanding, can the student explain ideas or concepts? For applying, can the student use the information in a new way? For analyzing, can the student distinguish between the different parts of something? For evaluating, can the student justify a stand or a decision that they make? And by creating, can students create a new product, or can they take on a new point of view based on doing all of the all the stuff underneath here? Okay, so we're going to go on to part 2 in the next video.